allow me to tell you all a story. The beginning of Adam and Eve. At the very beginning, God created the garden. The garden was so beautiful, so majestic, filled with all kinds of vegetation, mystical creatures, mystical animals, mystical beings. Just a beautiful sight to behold. But God wasn't satisfied because he believed that there should be divine, highly intelligent beings present to rule over the garden. He also decided that these beings should have infinite potential of growth of your mind. So God pondered, and he pondered, and he pondered, and he pondered. And then he finally came with an idea. He said, I will create humans, man and woman. So he began to work. He created the bodies of Adam and Eve from the clays of the garden, which was infused with dark matter energy from the universe, because the garden was created right in the middle of the universe, directly in the middle. So he created the bodies. He molded them. He sculpted them. He created them in his image. In his image, which was an idea inside of his consciousness, because you have to understand, God at this time was not a physical being. God was just a infinite pool of wisdom, knowledge, intellect, and understanding. So he created the bodies, and then he decided that he would share his spirit and share a part of his wisdom with these two bodies. Once he blew his spirit into the bodies became animated and they woke. Once they woke, he decided to call them Adam and Eve. So he created these beings, and he told the beings that this garden is your home. You are to rule over all of the animals, all of the vegetation, all of the beings here. You are their masters. All you must do is continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue But there's one thing you mustn't do, and that's eat from the tree. See, there was this very, very alluring tree that glowed with magnificent attraction. It bared fruits that also glowed. God said to Adam and Eve, never, ever, ever touch this tree. And they obliged. They listened. They understood. Now, let's back this up a little bit. Before the creation of Adam and Eve, there were already angels created. Now, these angels were very upset with God for the simple fact that God decided to create something other than them. And then on top of that, God favored the humans over the angels in which he had already created. So the angels decided to rebel because they were just as children. They got jealous because their father basically replaced them with other children, you see. So the angels got jealous, and they decided to rebel. And they made it their mission to destroy Adam and Eve, just to prove to God that no creation is greater than them. So the angels left and they went and they searched for this garden. When they finally found it, the head angel Samael decided, let's watch, let's study, and let's try to understand these beings. So they watched and they watched and they watched. They witnessed as Adam and Eve frolicked innocently through the forest like two naive children with no worries in the world. Just enjoying themselves, loving the scenery, doing the things that two innocent, pure souls would do. Samael and the rest of his angels watched and watched and watched. He noticed how Adam had such a amazing pull on Eve, and he noticed how Eve had such an amazing pull on Adam. They followed each other. They loved each other. You see. So Samael knew that if he could get one to fall, he could get both to fall, because they followed each other, just like the sun and moon. This is the reason why the sun and the moon both sets, because they follow each other. They fall because they follow each other. Understand? So Samael noticed that Adam and Eve never, ever, ever went near this particular tree that was the most alluring aspect of the whole forest. And he wondered, how could they ignore such a magnificent sight? Surely that must be a reason why. So he decided to transform himself into a snake man. And he waited, and he waited. He wanted to get one of them alone, particularly Eve, because he knew that he could compel Eve easier than he could compel Adam. See, the thing between Adam and Eve is Adam was more obeying to the Heavenly Father. Eve was more courageous. She was more curious, you see. And Samael knew this from his observations, from observing them. So he said, if I can catch Eve alone, surely I can trick her into eating from this tree. That is, after he discovered the reason why Adam and Eve was not eating from the tree. See, once he approached Eve, he asked, tell me, why haven't you touched this magnificent tree? Why haven't you eaten the fruits? Eve looked and she said, God said if we ate from the tree, we would surely go mad. Samael smirked and laughed with a very, very manipulating energy. And he said, surely you would not go crazy if you eat from this tree. Instead, you will become like God. Understand? So Eve became extremely curious. She wondered, why would God lie to us? Why would he lie? Why would he tell us we would go mad? So she slowly began to reach for the tree. But then she stopped. She stopped right before she touched it. And she turned around and she just ran off. She ran off back into the woods to go find Adam. But see, Samael knew that temptation would most definitely get the best of her eventually. Because the curiosity always killed the cat. So what happened was, as Adam and Eve are resting, Samael cast illusional spells over Eve's mind of her eating the tree and becoming this magnificent glowing being, just as God. He constantly casted these illusions over and over and over again, to eventually Eve woke up and her temptation has completely overtaken her. She goes back towards the tree. Without hesitation, she grabs the fruit and she bites it without even thinking about it. She swallows the fruit. Seconds upon swallowing the fruit, she noticed a tingling sensation throughout her body. She noticed a pressure feeling. She noticed a very, very intense feeling of desire throughout her body and especially in her womb. She didn't understand these feelings. She didn't know what was happening. So she turned and she ran. She ran to tell Adam what she's done because she felt like she screwed up at this point because she was feeling something that she's never felt before. She ran to Adam and told him what happened. Adam, in fear of losing Eve, because you have to understand, I already told you that Adam followed Eve and Eve followed Adam. You see. So Samael already knew that this was going to take place. And this is the reason why as soon as Eve ate the fruit and she went and told Adam, Samael began to cast illusional spells over Adam. Spells that made him fear of losing Eve because he knew that God will punish her. He knew. So he wouldn't lose Eve. Adam too took from the tree and took a bite. Once Adam took a bite, he noticed the same emotions. His body was filled with desire as his penis began to rise and enlarge. He noticed he had a strong desire to penetrate Eve's womb. And Eve, upon seeing the penis rise, had a strong desire to be penetrated. So they did. They made it for the very first time in the garden. To be continued.